Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm going to be giving my on second thought, or 100th thought, on It's a Wonderful Life. So if you've never seen It's a Wonderful Life, please do. It is one of the greatest movies ever made, and I don't say that lightly. I genuinely mean it is one of the best movies ever made. Not just Christmas movie, not holiday movie, not feel-good movie, not just drama, not classic 1940s movie. It is one of the best movies to ever be made and shown anywhere. Period. Growing up, I watched this movie all the time. It was constantly on the TV, and we all knew about it in my family. We all talked about it. We all quoted it. It's been parodied countless times. I just thought everybody knew this movie, and everybody knew who Jimmy Stewart was. But the older I get, the more I realize people don't know what this movie is. Like, I mentioned it to somebody, they were talking about their favorite Christmas movies, and they go, oh, I love Christmas movies. You've got The Grinch, you've got Elf, you've got A Christmas Story. I'm like, yeah, and It's a Wonderful Life. And they go, what's that? And you're like, oh, the Jimmy Stewart one, the one where he wishes he was never born. And they're like, oh, that sounds depressing. And you're like, what? Come on. So in case you don't know, the plot of this movie is Jimmy Stewart plays a banker who, instead of working for the man, decides to go out and work on his own in a private business. However, through different series of events, he ends up losing everything and eventually gets to the point of wishing he'd never been born. An angel then comes and visits him and shows him what life would be like if he was never born, what the world around him would be like if he had never affected anybody he ever knew. And it's amazing how you see all these different things of people dying because of not having that influence of him in their life, people going bankrupt and moving to alcoholism, and people just never coming out of their shell. Everybody in his world was so affected by him, and it's such a powerful story, and he realizes he does matter and he does have purpose. And then of course you do have the happy ending where they do end up getting the money together and he doesn't go bankrupt, and it's such a good story. It's such a wholesome story. And of course, like I said, it's starring Jimmy Stewart, who is one of my favorite actors of all time. He doesn't necessarily act different characters really well, but he's always himself, and I always love him in those movies. He's really good at portraying whatever emotion, whatever scenario he would as he would. And then it's also directed by Frank Capra, who's one of the best directors of all time, and certainly one of the best directors of that era. And it's also starring Donna Reed and a bunch of other people. The acting in this movie, the writing, everything is such a good, flawless movie, and you understand while watching it why it's been parodied so many times. And so many episodes, movies, different TV shows have all parodied this idea of going to an alternate reality where you don't exist and seeing how different the world would be, because it is such a powerful message that really permeates time. It can apply to any person at any time, because we all struggle with that idea of our own importance and our own power over the world around us and how much we actually affect the people around us. We often think, would life even be different if I didn't exist? And this movie answers that. And it does it so well, and I think part of that is it's just a really good idea. But Jimmy Stewart's performance really draws everything together because it's so genuine. And part of it's being genuine is because he's such a good actor, but the other part is he was going through a lot when he made this movie. He had gone away to the war and came back with PTSD, he was suicidal, he was extremely depressed, and he made this movie. And it shows in every ounce of his performance in this. You see that he's constantly on edge. You see his desperation to exist, to matter, to have any sort of impact on the world around him, and just to make life a little bit better for other people. And you see that in his eyes, in his mannerisms, in everything he does in this movie. It's so good, it's so powerful, and especially after knowing everything he'd been through and coming back and dealing with that, you can see it in his performance, and it makes it all the better. Another great thing about this movie is I kind of went over the synopsis, but honestly, the synopsis I told is really the second half of this movie, because the first half does such a great job of setting everything up. Most of the different versions of this or parodies of this just do the second half, where it's the whole thing where he actually does go to the alternate reality and view everything. But this movie has a whole other hour where it's setting up this character, and that matters so much. You get to see how great of a person he was, you get to see everything he's been through, and you get to see how quickly that descent then can happen from being on top of a mountain to being in the deepest of valleys. And it shows that it wasn't just some simple fit or a simple tantrum that he threw. He genuinely meant it because of everything that had happened. And it did turn quickly, but there was multiple events that took him from being so high to so low so quick. It's extremely well written. It takes its audience very seriously. It expects you to be able to keep up with it, but it doesn't rush anything either. And it's very well done. Like, this movie is probably flawless. Like, it's really good. Whenever I'm trying to show people that don't necessarily believe me that movies before the 80s and 90s were good too, this is one of the first movies I show them, because it works, because people realize movies back then not only were as good as they are now, they were better. The dialogue is so much better written, the acting is so much more genuine, the scenarios are so much more human and real and so much more interesting, and this is the best movie to show that, because you go, hey, it's a Christmas movie. Everybody loves Christmas movies. Here you go. A good movie that doesn't even necessarily have to be watched around Christmas. It could be watched any time of the year. And yeah, I like to watch it around Christmas because why not? If you took Christmas out of the story, it would still be just as good. And you can argue, well, then is it a Christmas movie? Yes, it is. This movie is about everything that has to do with Christmas. It's about doing good to others when it doesn't benefit you, doing everything you can to help those around you and make the world around you a better place, even when you don't see the benefit. And yeah, sometimes you get to a place where you want to give up because it doesn't seem worth it. Well, this is a great movie to watch when you do feel like that, because then you get to see, yeah, it does matter. I do matter. And this is a great movie about that. And people have complained about this movie recently because it's so old and the things back then were very different, and people like to complain about everything. And one of the biggest complaints I've heard about this movie is that Lionel Barrymore, who plays his wife in this movie, in the reality where he doesn't exist, is an old maid. And a lot of people like to complain about this and say that it's sexist or that's old-fashioned or whatever, and it's not. The reality of this character was that if she had never met him and never gotten married to him, that she would have been extremely closed off to the rest of the world. She would have never opened up to different people. She would have just went away and done her work and never seemingly been interested in anybody else. She would have been scared of everybody and just been alone. That's what I get out of this movie. It's not saying that he's the only good thing in her life. That's not true at all. But he allowed her to be open to having all of these different friends and being interested in having a family. Whatever happened to her without him stopping it from happening led her to not wanting to ever get married, not wanting to have kids, not wanting to be around people, because she was so closed off and so scared of everybody in this version, in this reality. So I'm not sure that he necessarily did anything to change her, to make her a better person, but he prevented something terrible from happening to her, apparently. And I'm not sure, it doesn't really explain which one it is, but it's still a great thing. Maybe she got abused by somebody because she was too trusting, or maybe she just never got to a point where she could trust anybody. Whichever it is, he made such an impact on her that he changed her life forever. And that's the greatest thing about this movie, is it doesn't just show him doing things, it shows also the possibility of him preventing things from happening. Like I mentioned, one of the other guys that he helps out a lot becomes an alcoholic in the other version. It's not like he personally stopped him from drinking, but he wasn't there to make his life better, so he never felt like becoming an alcoholic. And that's such a good story. It's such a good message. And the casting is just so good too. Like I mentioned, Jimmy Stewart's in it, Lionel Barrymore's in it, Thomas Mitchell's in it. Everybody in this movie is great, and Frank Capra is one of the greatest directors of all time, undisputably, and definitely one of my favorite directors of all time as well. And this movie is timeless, and I think everybody should see it. And I thought everybody had as a kid, and it's still shocking to me so many people don't even know what it is. So if you haven't seen it yet for whatever reason, please watch it. It is amazing. So that's what I thought of it. Please, in the comments, let me know your favorite Christmas movie of all time. Let me know what you guys think of this one in particular. And please, have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching, guys. Love you all. Bye.